This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The Foreign Minister, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, entrusted by the President of the Republic, is in Abuja, Nigeria, where he held talks with his Nigerian counterpart Yusuf Tagar, devoted notably to the situation in Niger. And the BRICS countries have affirmed in their final declaration the need to apply international legality in Western Sahara. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the chief of Russian Wagner Group, who staged a short-lived mutiny against Russia's military leadership in June, was on board a plane that crashed northwest of Moscow on Wednesday. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. Good afternoon. First, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, who has been appointed by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, is in Abuja, Nigeria, where he held talks with his Nigerian counterpart, Yusuf Tagar. The talks between the two parties focused on the latest developments in the crisis in Niger and the prospects for strengthening efforts to reach a peaceful solution that will guarantee a return to constitutional order and avoid the country the risk, or spare the country the risk of military intervention. The two sides exchanged information and analyses on the diplomatic efforts made by the two countries aimed at putting an end to this crisis in their common neighborhood, hailing, in this respect, the initiatives taken by the President of the Republic and his Nigerian counterpart in his capacity as the President of the Community or the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The two ministers agreed to continue and strengthen coordination between the two countries over this next few days in order to seize all available opportunities in favor of a political solution and not to miss any opportunity in order to ensure the restoration of security and stability in Niger on a lasting basis. And the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lounes Magraman, appointed by the President of the Republic, is today visiting Niger as part of Algeria's relentless and ongoing efforts to contribute to a peaceful solution to the crisis in this neighboring country. A press release from the ministry has said that the visit is part of the country's efforts to reach a peaceful solution to the crisis in Niger, sparing this brotherly country and the entire region an increase in risk. As part of his visit, the Ministry Secretary General will have a series of meetings with Niger's high-ranking officials. Former Nigerian leader and economic Community of West African State, ECOWAS Envoy General Abdulsalami Abubakar has expressed confidence in the peaceful resolution of the crisis in Niger, emphasizing the pivotal role of diplomacy. Abubakar disclosed this to State House correspondents on Tuesday after a meeting convened by ECOWAS Chairman President Bola Tinubu, where discussions with the ousted President of Niger and the new military leaders were on the agenda. Also at the meeting were the President of the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Omar Touare, and the National Security Advisor to the President, Malam Nuhu Ribadu. General Abubakar conveyed that he had presented the terms outlined by the military authorities led by Abdurrahman Chiani to ECOWAS. According to him, correspondences had begun between the West African Regional Bloc and the military in Niger, noting that the line of contact opened by ECOWAS through his appointment as envoy had been very fruitful, expressing hope that something concrete will soon come out of it. Asked if there was a possibility of avoiding a military action, he said, "Hopefully diplomacy will see the better of this. Nobody wants to go war. It doesn't pay anybody, but then again, our leaders have said if all fails, and I don't think all will fail, we'll get somewhere we'll get out of this mess." No fewer than 7,000 migrants to Europe were stranded in the Republic of Niger following the July 26 coup and the subsequent closure of the borders of the country. The migrants who have been trying to go back home have been trapped in Niger since late July, where members of the Presidential Guard overthrew the country's democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum. The United Nations officials estimated that about 1,800 migrants are living on Niger's streets because centers run by the International Organization for Migration were too crowded to take in more. The centers hold about 5,000 people trying to get home. According to the acting interim chief of mission for the agency in Niger, Paola Pace, the UN agency has been assisting approximately 1,250 people a month to return to their countries this year, but the closure of borders and space has forced it to temporarily suspend returns, and its centers are now jammed at 14% over capacity. Niger is an important route for both Africans trying to reach Libya as a jumping-off spot to cross to the Mediterranean to Europe, and those who are returning to their homes with help from the UN. Prime Minister Ayman bin Abdurrahman has held bilateral talks with his counterpart from the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, Bushraya Hamoudi Bayoun. During these talks, the two sides have expressed their satisfaction about the brotherly relations between the two countries and peoples, affirming their strong will to pursue and develop bilateral cooperation in various fields. The Prime Minister also evoked with Bayouni the latest developments linked to the Western Sahara issue at all levels, affirming Algeria's firm position of solidarity with the Sahrawi people's struggle to enshrine their right to self-determination in conformity with the African Union and the United Nations resolutions. Now the BRICS bloc has decided to expand the number of its members by inviting 6 new countries, namely Argentina, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, and Egypt, to join the group of countries which jointly pledged to champion the Global South. The bloc, which is made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is meeting at the Sandton Convention Center in Johannesburg, South Africa, with the debate over the expansion of BRICS topping the agenda. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa delivered an address on August 24 and declared the names of the new members while announcing the summit's outcomes. He said that Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and UAE are invited to become full members of BRICS. The membership will come into effect from January 2024. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said on the occasion of the 15th anniversary of BRICS, the important decision to expand the bloc was taken. He added that India has always believed that the addition of new members will further strengthen BRICS as an organization, and it will give a new impetus to shared efforts. The expansion of BRICS will inject new impetus into the group's cooperation mechanism, Chinese President Xi Jinping added. China, on its part, said BRICS alliance should embrace an expanded partnership, thereby accommodating more developing nations. The decision of expanding the bloc was hailed notably by the leaders of the new members, including the UAE and Iran. And the Algerian Chamber of Commerce and Industry has signed a memorandum of understanding with its South African counterpart on the sidelines of the 15th session of the BRICS Summit in Johannesburg for the creation of a joint business council. The memorandum was signed by the president of the Algerian Chamber of Commerce, Kamal Hamini, and his South African counterpart in the presence of the Minister of Finance, Mr. Aziz Faid, and the Chief of Staff of the Ministry of Commerce and Export Promotion, Souhila Abelash. For Mr. Hamini, the council will serve as a driving force to increase the volume of trade between Algeria and South Africa, as well as serving or to help strengthening African integration, particularly following Algeria's accession to the African Continental Free Trade Area. This approach will also enable economic operators from both countries to examine opportunities for partnership, cooperation, and investment, said Mr. Hamani, adding that all the conditions are met for mutually beneficial trade and economic exchange. It was also agreed at this meeting to organize a working visit for South African economic operators on the occasion of the 31st edition of the Algerian Production Fair, scheduled for next December. And finally, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the chief of Russian Wagner Group, who staged a short-lived mutiny against Russia's military leadership in June, was on board a plane that crashed northwest of Moscow on Wednesday, the Russian Federal Air Transport Agency said. An investigation has been launched into the crash of the Embraer aircraft which occurred in the Tver region. There were 7 passengers and 3 crew members on board the private Embraer jet when it crashed near the village of Kushikino in the Tver region on Wednesday, according to the Russian Ministry of Emergency Services. All on board were killed, according to preliminary information, the ministry said, adding that they are conducting search operations. The bodies of 8 people have been found at the crash site, state media outlet Russia 24 reported. Russian investigators have initiated a criminal case following the crash. The Russian Investigative Committee said that a team was on the way to the scene to establish the causes of the crash. The crash comes a month after Prigozhin launched a brief rebellion that posed an unprecedented challenge to Russian President Vladimir Putin's authority before it was suddenly called off in a deal that required the Wagner chief and his fighters to relocate to Belarus. As news of the crash broke, Putin was taking part in an event hundreds of miles away from the site in the Kursk region to mark the anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany there. And with this, we come to the end of this news bulletin for today. Time now for weekly programs, starting with my colleague Mazarel Sfer with his program on culture. It will be followed by another program by my colleague Aziza Gassias. For me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin in English. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International, and bye-bye for now.
In late 19th century, shabby music, which means popular, appeared for the first time. At that time, shabby was played in secrecy. The 1950s brought a great change, and shabby is now played at musical plays, parties, weddings, and religious gatherings.
حرمت بيك نعاسي يا ميرة الريان
Shabby singers transmit a strong moral message using Arabic vocals and a myriad of instruments including violins, mandolins, pianos, harps, and clapping. This type of music is portrayed in plays because it wants the guest to perceive a different way of thinking and also what strikes the eye of love and glory. One of these shabby singers is late Kamal Msaoudi, who modernized the genre.
شداني نعشق عينين الغزال أنا الممحون عزوف المند أنا الممحون عزوف المند من السر والجمال عشق بالسر حبيبي عشق بالسر حبيبي هو طبيبي بلا بيه مندوب بلا بيه مندوب بلا بيه مندوب
Kamal Msaoudi is an Algerian shabby music performer. He was born on January 13, 1961 in Bouzria, the outskirts of Algiers. When he was a child, he was a smart student. At that time, late Kamal was vowed to a brilliant career in studies, but chose to devote himself to music. In 1974, late Kamal Msaoudi formed his band that performed in many ceremonies, weddings, and family gatherings. Thanks to his unique voice and a big talent hidden on him, he was quickly discovered by his friends, who were his first admirers, and then by shabby professionals. Kamal follows the path of his eldest brother, who was interested in music, who chose the path of his popular music. His first record came out in 1985, and then the second in 1990, but in 1991, his famous song Shama, or Candle, was considered a masterpiece by shabby music lovers. From that moment, they started tours, solicited by the media, for interviews, and gained more popularity among his fans.
انتي الشمعة حد مدرالك بالقراح انتي الشمعة حد مدرالك بالقراح القراح وإلا درا ما تجرعي في ليلة في ليلة انتي يا الشمعة حد ما درالك بالقرار انتي يا الشمعة حد ما درالك بالقراح وإلا درا ما تجرعي في ليلة الغير تزيني له الفرح وانتي فانية بدموعك طيلة طيلة أنا ونيسك حتى الصباح نحكي والاثنين على همومنا الطويلة مالي ومال الشمعة ما ضوت لي في ضلال مالي ومال السعد ما سبق مليل ايام مالي ومال الشمعة ما ضوت لي في ضلال مالي ومال السعد ما سبق مليل ايام ما فرحني نساني في الايام اللي مضاو عني مرار خبلني تخمام حتى مصيب ما فرحني نساني في الايام اللي مضاو عني مرار خبلني تخمام سقمي دمي يا مقام بدل حلمي بوهام لا طالب ولا طبيب عالج ليا السقام نوم هاني يا الليل انا عليك عساس المبنيين على الخداع حرموا لي نوعاس ما تمنى صار قاموا عليها العراس من يدهم شربت المرام كاسيت بعكاس مالي ومال شمسي غطوها الغيوم مالي ومال سمايا ما قعدت فيه نجوم مالي ومال شمسي غطوها الغيوم مالي ومال سمايا ما قعدت فيه نجوم. مالي ومال الشمع ما ضوت لي في ظلام. مالي ومال السعد ما سقم لي ليام. مالي ومال الشمع ما ضوت لي في ظلام. مالي ومال السعد ما سقم لي ليام. شفقة يا عيني يبكي ودموعك زراب. من فيك ترسخ وصفو عاد عليك هراب. بلا شفقة يا عيني يبكي ودموعك زراب. من فيك ترسخ وصفو عاد عليك هراب. حليلك يا القلب التكوى الجمر فيك لهاب. الفرقة من بعد الأولى ما كان يفوهم صعاب. على شكيت ونست بيه جو حسدوني فيه. ما عذروني ما داقوا ذوق لا يبليك. روحي يا العذرة ونسي من يبغي. هذا حقنا من الله كتبوا عليا وعليك. مالي ومال شمسي غطوها الغيوم. مالي ومال سمايا ما قعدت فيه نجوم. مالي ومال شمسي غطوها الغيوم. مالي ومال سمايا ما قعدت فيه نجوم. مالي ومال الشمع ما ضوت لي في ظلام. مالي ومال السعد ما سقم لي ليام. مالي ومال الشمع ما ضوت لي في ظلام. مالي ومال السعد ما سقم لي ليام. في الرياح ما عرفتو وين راح. حليل من حالو كي حالي ما عرف لي شي راح. ضميري طاير في الرياح ما عرفتو وين راح. حليل من حالو كي حالي ما عرف لي شي راح. من هاد الهموم يا وخي انا باغي نرتاح. نهني جسمي العليل ونعالج الجراح. نوب عليا يلا نوبة تجي في الصواب. كل سؤال اللي طرحتو ما لحقوني بجواب. حتى صحاب اللي ظنيت في وقت الضيق تنصار. اللي قصدتو للميعاد في وجهي غلق الباب. مالي ومال شمسي غطوها الغيوم. مالي ومال سمايا ما قعدت فيه نجوم. مالي ومال شمسي غطوها الغيوم. مالي ومال سمايا ما قعدت فيه نجوم. مالي ومال الشمع ما ضوت لي في ظلام. مالي ومال السعد ما سقم لي ليام. مالي ومال الشمع ما ضوت لي في ظلام. مالي ومال السعد ما سقم لي ليام.